Imagine this. You've worked at the same place for 17 years. 17 years. You know where everything is. You know the regulars by name. You've probably seen 3 different managers come and go, and you genuinely care about the place. Then one day, a known thief walks in, starts stuffing a bag full of Lindt Gold Bunnies, and you think, not today, mate. So you step in. You grab the bag. There's a scuffle. The bag tears. Chocolate bunnies go flying. The thief legs it, and out of sheer frustration, you throw a broken bit of chocolate towards the trolleys. Nobody hit. Nobody hurt. Just a man at the end of his tether. And then Waitrose turns around and says, "You're fired." Welcome to modern Britain, folks, where the criminal gets away clean and the loyal employee of nearly 2 decades gets shown the door. Nigel Farage has something to say about that. And honestly, so do we. Let's set the scene properly because the details here are genuinely extraordinary. Walker Smith, 54, had worked at Waitrose in Clapham Junction for 17 years and described the retailer as like his family. Yahoo! 17 years. That's not just a job, that's basically a vow. The incident began when a customer approached Mr. Smith to alert him that someone was loading chocolate products into a Waitrose carrier bag, and Mr. Smith recognized the individual as a repeat offender who had previously targeted the store. GB News. So this wasn't some stranger he'd never seen before. This was someone he knew. Someone the store knew. A familiar face with a very familiar habit. Now here's where it gets even more telling. Mr. Smith said he was spurred into action by watching thefts at the store every hour of every day for the last 5 years. Yahoo! 5 years. Every hour. Every single day. Can you imagine clocking in, watching theft happen constantly, feeling utterly powerless, and being told that's just how it is now? That's not a workplace policy. That's a slow psychological torture. So when this man finally snapped and acted, it wasn't recklessness. It was 5 years of frustration boiling over in one very human moment. And what did Waitrose say in response? They defended the sacking by pointing out that staff have a duty to follow protocol and not confront shoplifters. In a statement, Waitrose said they had incidents where their partners had been hospitalized when challenging shoplifters, and that there is a serious danger to life in tackling shoplifters, adding that nothing they sell is worth risking lives for. Yahoo! Now look, in isolation, that sounds almost reasonable. Nobody wants their staff getting hurt. Fine. But there's a problem with this argument, and it's quite a big one. The argument essentially is, let the theft happen every single time, no exceptions, and if you dare to disagree with that, you're out. You have to ask, at what point does a policy designed to protect workers end up becoming a policy that abandons them entirely? And that brings us to the political earthquake this has triggered. Because when something this obvious happens, the politicians pile in fast. And honestly, some of them are absolutely right to do so. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage responded on X, saying Britain is now a country that favors criminals over law enforcers, and that Britain is broken. Yahoo! Now you might agree with Farage, you might not, but the sentiment there is one that an awful lot of ordinary people are feeling right now. Because when you hear a story like Walker Smith's, it doesn't feel like a one-off corporate HR blunder. It feels like a symptom of something much larger going wrong. And here's where the story gets an extra layer, because this didn't happen in a vacuum. This all comes in the wake of mobs of youths wreaking havoc in Clapham, with Farage saying that if you decriminalize shoplifting, don't be surprised when acceptable behavior escalates into intimidation, threats, and danger. LBC, Clapham Junction, the very same area where Walker Smith worked, had just seen the kind of chaos you'd normally associate with a disaster movie. A local Waitrose closed its doors during the disorder, sticking a police-advised closure notice onto its front door, and Boots was targeted very badly according to witnesses. LBC. So the context here is absolutely critical. This isn't a Waitrose in a quiet village somewhere. This is Clapham, ground zero for some of the most alarming street disorder Britain has seen in years. Now, speaking of that disorder, because we can't just gloss over what happened on the streets of Clapham, the scale of it was genuinely shocking. Police responded to reports of a group of around 100 young people causing antisocial behavior and stealing from a number of businesses on Clapham High Street. Imposing a dispersal order and making 3 arrests, Two 16-year-old girls and one 15-year-old girl arrested for shoplifting and assault. LBC. 3 arrests from a mob of 100. You do the maths on how many people just walked away without consequences. The Conservatives have also jumped in on the Walker Smith story. Shadow Justice Minister Kieran Mullan said that punishing people who step in to stop crime is wrong, and that people doing the right thing were being punished. Yahoo! They reaffirmed their commitment to so-called Good Samaritan protections for employees like retail staff and bus drivers. Whether you trust the Conservatives to actually deliver on that promise is a separate conversation, but the fact that it's now become a political talking point tells you everything about the public mood. People are furious, and they should be, because here's the bigger picture that nobody in government seems to want to properly address. Office for National Statistics data shows 519,381 shoplifting offences recorded in the year to September 2025, a 5% increase on the previous year. GB News. 500,000 shoplifting offences in a single year. And rising. Retail bosses have urged stronger action and warned that offenders have grown more brazen, more organized, and more aggressive in their treatment of employees. GB News. More brazen. More organized. More aggressive. Those 3 words together should be keeping ministers up at night. Around 1,300 retail staff members face assault or abuse every single day across the industry. GB News. Every single day. That's not a crisis on the horizon. That's a crisis that's already here, fully arrived, making itself at home on the high street, and apparently nobody's done enough about it. And if you thought this couldn't get more absurd, buckle up. Because while Waitrose was busy firing the man trying to stop theft, a completely separate group of activists was busy planning to rob Waitrose on purpose. Take Back Power, an activist group that previously threw apple crumble in custard of the crown jewels, announced plans to come down to London in April for a week of action, with 50 to 100 people just going in and clearing out a Waitrose. GB News. They're calling it a political statement. Most sane people are calling it theft with a press release. Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, described it as blatant and despicable law-breaking being brazenly planned, calling the activists nothing more than common criminals and anarchists dressing up their crimes in a pathetic cloak of confected moral superiority. GB News. That last phrase, confected moral superiority, is doing a lot of heavy lifting, but honestly, it's hard to disagree. You don't fix inequality by nicking 13-pound Lindt bunnies from a supermarket. You just give GB News a great segment. So let's zoom all the way out and look at what we actually have here. You've got a loyal, long-serving worker who snapped after years of watching theft go unchallenged and lost everything for it. You've got mobs descending on high streets across England. You've got 500,000 shoplifting crimes a year, and the number is still climbing. You've got activists literally announcing their plans to loot supermarkets and daring anyone to stop them. And you've got a government that, according to the chief executive of the Institute of Customer Service, has provided no real engagement on surging high street crime, which she described as a serious threat to economic growth. No real engagement on something this visible, this loud, this obvious. Walker Smith described Waitrose as like his family. He gave them 17 years. And when he finally, human lie, broke under the weight of a broken system, they let him go. The question isn't really whether Waitrose followed their policy. They probably did. The question is whether the policy itself and the society that made it feel necessary has completely lost the plot. Nigel Farage says Britain is broken. A lot of people who wouldn't normally agree with Farage on much are quietly nodding along to that one. This is the kind of story that should make every single one of us stop and think about what kind of country we're building. A country where doing the right thing can cost you everything. Where crime surges and the person who objects pays the price. That's not justice. That's an upside-down world, and it's happening right now on the British High Street. If this video made you think, made you angry, or made you want to throw a chocolate bunny at something in frustration, Walker Smith would understand. Then smash that like button and make sure you're subscribed to British Reform for daily coverage of the stories that actually matter. Drop your thoughts in the comments below because I genuinely want to know where you stand on this one. Is Britain broken? See you in the next video.